Okay, this section is pretty fast. It's again about estimating, but really about estimating and no measuring. So it's not like there's a right or wrong, but there's certain answers that are more reasonable than others. So let's just take a look at try these. You can get a piece of paper out, a normal piece of paper that's 8.5 by 11 if you like. And basically, that's how you can form a cylinder. If you roll it, you can either roll it, so it says roll one into a short cylinder, okay? So that would be basically the long side would become the circumference of the circle, or you can roll it so that it's a long and skinny one. So that means the width of the piece of paper is now the circumference of the circle. And so it's asking you which one would have a greater volume than the other. Well, let's just think about how to calculate the volume of a cylinder. So volume of a cylinder is pi r squared, that's the area of the base, times the height. So think about these are the three things. This is always going to be 3.1415, etc., pi, but then r squared times h. So the radius, you're going to square it. So if we could have, probably the bigger the radius we get, the bigger the volume. Now, obviously, the height will be shorter for one than the other. This is a smaller value here, height 1, and this is height 2. But then this radius is R2, this is R1, and this one is larger. So my reasoning on this one is that it would be the shorter cylinder, because the radius will be larger and it will be squared. And really the difference between H1 here would be the 8.5, and this would be 11. And so the difference between those isn't as big as squaring the difference between the radii. Okay, but you could test it out. If we did test it, maybe we should test it out. If we did test it out, this radius, half of 11 would be 5.5, and this would be half of 8.5, which would be 4.25. So the volume here would be pi times 5.5 squared times 8.5, basically 107.8. And the other one, the volume would be pi times 4.25 squared times 11, which would be 624.2. So you can see that it would be the shorter cylinder. Okay, next one, Quinton is a landscaper. The topsoil delivered to a customer's driveway formed a cone. So sometimes you'll see this in people's yard. They'll get the company to drop off some soil, sometimes some bark, and it forms a cone if they've just dumped it. Sometimes it comes in a bag, and you'll see it's kind of a cube-looking bag, and then they'll come back and take the bag, but sometimes they just dump it. So that's what they're doing here. He estimates the pile has a diameter of 8 feet, so all the way across is 8, and a height of 4. Okay, so obviously we can calculate the volume of that, but we're trying to do some estimating. It says name a referent with a volume of about 1 cubic foot. So referent is some object that you might have in your house, at school, that you might see that has a volume of about 1 cubic foot. So if we had a perfect cube that had dimensions of 1, then that would be 1 cubic foot. So think about, so a box that's that big. Well, a foot is 12 inches. So if you've ever seen those, a common reference for this would be what we call a file box. And so it's a box, it's kind of like for, it's used in offices. We don't, at school, we use bigger boxes of paper. They're not file boxes because they're more rectangular because there's two sort of stacks. But a file box, sometimes you'll see them, they'll have holes on each side and a lid going over, and they're about 1 foot by 1 foot by 1 foot. So a file box, that might be a common one. Not sure if you had like a full case of pop, 24 cans. That would be longer than a foot. So that might be like a foot and a half by 1 foot, but then only by like 6 inches, so half a foot. And so that wouldn't be quite as much as 1 cubic foot. So let's just keep with this one. So how many reference stacked would look like a pile of topsoil? So if we're using cubic boxes like that, then the closest would be almost like a pyramid, right? So we'd have box here, box here, box here, and make kind of a square. Ooh, that's not so great, but maybe you can get what I'm looking at. Something like that. Now that's a rectangle, so we'd have to do 3 by 3, and then on top we could start. So 3 by 3 is 9. Maybe we need bigger than that though, because this is 8 as a diameter. This is only 3. So we would maybe want to start with, let's start with something like 8 by 8. Remember, that's a circle, so it's not going to be the same as 8 by 8 of the boxes. So let's start with 6 by 6, and then let's go smaller than that, because obviously it's supposed to go up to a point. So we could go, then let's go a 4 by 4, and then 2 by 2 would kind of keep it right. Well, maybe we'll have to do a 3 by 3, then a 2 by 2, then a 1 by 1. So it's kind of going up to a point. This would just be one box at the top. So that would be 9, that would be 4, that would be 1. So what would that be? 42, 52, 62, 66, which would be pretty close if you think about this, because for a cone, that would technically the, so that would be 66 would be our estimate. The actual volume would be pi times 4 squared times 4 divided by 3. So if you think of pi and 3, they're kind of close. Divide out, then 4 cubed is 64. So pretty good estimate of what we have. So 66 is what our estimate is. Estimating the volume of a typical cell phone. So reasonable reference, you basically want to use something that's maybe a centimeter squared. And so if you've ever had a sugar cube, they don't use them that much anymore unless you go to a fancy restaurant that might have sugar cubes, but you can certainly buy them in the store. But they're typically a centimeter by centimeter by centimeter. Probably there's some candies like I'm wondering if like you know those red raspberry candies, gummy kind of things. They're not squares, but they might be close to 1 centimeter squared. So if you think about sort of lining those up on your cell phone, I'm looking at mine. I probably have about 10 as my length, and my cell phone needs cleaning from what I can see here. 10 and maybe 5 as my width. So I'd go 10 by 5 of the cubes would be 50 centimeters cubed. And I used a sugar cube. Okay, because I know what that is, but maybe there's some types of candies or maybe even certain sticks of gum that you might be, you kind of have to know what the measurements are for those though. In any case, reference is all about using something that you know the approximate length of. Okay, so there's just a few questions for you to practice in this